In 1983, I was 14 years old, living in Leicestershire. 8 miles down the road from me, in November 1983, Lynda Mann was returning home after doing some babysitting. She was never seen alive again. In July 1986, Dawn Ashworth came across the same fate. She was coming home from a night out with friends and was never seen alive again. This is the story of the first murder to be solved using DNA. Kathleen Mann was born and raised in Leicester. Her 5-year marriage ended in the 1970s and she moved back in with her mother. Shortly after, she took over her brother's subsidised flat in Narborough when he moved out. After 9 years of being single, Kathleen met Edward Eastwood at a singles night at Braunston Hotel in Leicester. Eddie was originally from Yorkshire. He was an ex-soldier who changed his name by deed poll to Eastwood, presumably as a fan of Clint. He moved in with Kathleen in 1980 when Lynda was 12 and her sister Susan was 14. They got married in December. The following year, Kathleen and Eddie had a baby girl named Rebecca. Lynda was a bubbly girl and a straight-A student. She had ambitions of being a multilingualist and practiced French, German and Italian with ambitions of trying Chinese. On Monday the 21st of November 1983, Lynda went to babysit for a neighbour, arriving there at 5 p.m. and leaving at 6:20 p.m. She came home and went to another babysitting appointment at another neighbour's, Mrs. Walker. When Lynda arrived, Mrs. Walker told her she wouldn't be needed as she was sick from work. With that, Lynda walked home. She got home at 6:55 and then went to her friend's Karen Blackwell and planned to see her other friend Caroline. At 7:10, Lynda walked down Red Hill Avenue to Karen's and bumped into another friend called Margaret, who asked her where she was going. Down a friend's was the reply. She arrived at Karen's where she gave her mother part payment for a jacket she had bought from Kay's catalogue. After that, she left to go to her friend Caroline's to collect a record she'd loaned her. Lynda took a short cut up the back pad, a path down towards the cemetery behind Narborough Church. Kath and Eddie Eastwood got home at 12:30 a.m. after a night out when they found Susan, their eldest, waiting up for Lynda. Eddie Eastwood drove around the streets. He called Braunston Police Station at 1:30 a.m. to report Lynda missing. The next morning, a hospital porter was on his way to work and saw what he thought was a mannequin at the black pad towards the grassy fields of the hospital grounds. She was naked from the waist down with a smear of red about the nose. He ran out and flagged down a passing motorist who was a colleague who was also an ambulance driver, and they went back together. The colleague went up to Lynda and tried to find a pulse, but there wasn't one. Rigor mortis had set in. The lab analysis has showed that the killer had raped Lynda prior to death. Semen was taken from a swab. They analysed the blood group and discovered he was a Group A secretor PGM1 plus enzyme, which only 1 out of 10 men in the UK are. In 1984, at Leicester University, a 34-year-old scientist stumbled on a discovery which would lead to the capture of the murderer. Geneticist Alec Jeffreys was working on identifying the genetic material that varied from person to person. He didn't speak publicly about genetic fingerprinting until November 1984. In March 1985, his findings were published where he estimated the chances of 2 people having the same DNA fingerprints were none. So there was a boy from Africa who was wanting to move it back with his mother who lived in England and his father lived in Africa. However, the immigration authorities believed that the mother was actually his aunt. So they asked Alec to investigate. The mother herself wasn't 100% sure who the biological father was of this son who wanted to move from Africa to England. So they took DNA samples from her existing known biological children between her and her husband. and compared them to the boy who was trying to move here from Africa, and they found that she was indeed the mother of the child. In 1986, Jeffrey's comments on him hoping DNA analysis would be a recognised method were printed in the Leicester Mercury. The last paragraph read, "The new technique could mean a breakthrough in many areas, including the identification of criminals from a small sample of blood at the scene of the crime." In October 1986, a 16-year-old trainee hairdresser said goodnight to her boyfriend on a street corner in Wigston, 6 miles from Narborough. She walked down Blaby Road and ended up going toward the footbridge over the railway. There was no lighting, so she walked quickly. The girl saw something that made her slow down. It was a man. She saw he was wearing a blue hooded jacket with white tassels. She ignored him and tried to walk past him. His arm grabbed her around the neck. She started to scream and felt the edge of the screwdriver in her neck. He whispered to her, "Shut up, screaming, or I'll kill you." She was dragged backwards towards the houses, between a row of garages, where he pushed her until her face pressed against the wall and forced her to perform oral sex on him. She didn't tell anyone until the next day when she told her manager, who informed the police. Robin and Barbara Ashworth lived in Enderby with their 2 children, Dawn, who was 15 years old, and her 13-year-old brother. Robin was a gas engineer, and Barbara worked in customer liaison in Next. Dawn's eyes were blue hazel, disguised as bright and expressive, suited to her vivacious personality. She was artistic rather than academic, and had a part-time job during the summer holidays working at the newsagents in Enderby, and spent her money on fashion magazines and clothes. She was said to be a reliable, like-a-call girl, who seemed to know everyone in the village. She liked going out every night in the summer, but her parents insisted she was home by 9:30 p.m. sharp. On the morning of July the 31st, 1986, Robin woke her daughter to go to her job. After receiving her wages at 3:30 p.m, she went home. From there, she went to have her tea with her friends Sue and Sharon. Barbara asked her daughter to be home by 7 p.m, because Dawn and Robin were going to a birthday party for a friend's little boy. So Dawn decided to add some sweets to the presents she'd already bought for the child. So she went to the newsagents and bought a 50p box of Smarties to include. She left the shop at 4 p.m. and headed to her friend's house. 2 village girls saw Dawn pass the bowling green and tennis courts. A teenage boy also saw her as she neared the grassy footpath. As she reached the fork, she could either walk up the motorway or go down to £10 Lane. She chose £10 Lane and carried on to call at the house of her friend Sharon. She was told by her mother that she had gone with Sue and to try Sue's house. When she arrived at Sue's house, her mum told her they weren't there, but maybe at the village if she wanted to try there. She decided not to do that and headed home. A motorist saw her about to enter £10 Lane at 4:40 p.m. When Robin arrived from work, Dawn's friend Sue rang asking for Dawn, apologising for not being around when she dropped by. He told her she hadn't got home yet. After that call, he took the dog for a walk. He came home to change for the party, but Dawn hadn't come home by the 7 p.m. deadline, so Barbara went to deliver the presents and come back, but Dawn was not home. Barbara drove to Sue's house and found out that she hadn't been seen since 6:30. She searched the village, found Sharon and Sue, and they had no idea where Dawn was. So Barbara and Robin started to search for Dawn with some friends. After a fruitless search, they rang the police at 9:40 p.m. The next day, policemen and tracker dogs searched the Narborough area for Dawn. On the morning of 2nd of August, during a search of the fields, the M1 and £10 Lane, a police sergeant found a blue denim jacket by the footbridge. There was a lipstick and cigarette packet in the pocket. The area was sealed off immediately by police tape and uniformed constables. 4 different witnesses saw a man on a motorbike. Some of them described him as having a red motorbike and wearing a red crash helmet. A day before Dawn's body was found, a policeman and detective saw a youth on a motorcycle, taking an interest in the scene. He wore a red helmet and had a red motorcycle. He was a 17-year-old kitchen porter from the nearby Carlton Hayes Hospital. The officer questioned him after he volunteered that he saw Dawn walking up there. On 7th of August, a colleague and friend of the porter's visited him at 10 p.m. and told him where Dawn's body had been found. When the friend's father overheard it, he asked where he'd got the information, as he hadn't seen it on the telly. The voice said someone told him. He said her body was hanging from a tree, which it hadn't been. Then another witness came forward to report what the porter had been saying. On the 8th of August, the police arrested him. He was driven to Wixton Police Station, where many interviews were recorded. I believe he was questioned for about 15 hours. Eventually, the youth was worn down to where he confessed. It was later acknowledged that he had learning difficulties. Alec Jeffreys was asked by a Leicestershire detective to analyse samples of blood and semen to assist in executing the youth. Jeffreys analysed and told him the youth hadn't killed Dawn or Lynda. A news conference was called where the police announced that the test didn't implicate him in the murder of Lynda Mann or Dawn Ashworth. That night, the news announced that police have reopened the hunt. Youth accused of murder is freed. A campaign was drawn up of voluntary blood testing for every male resident of Narborough, Enderby and Littlethorpe, which was a nearby village, Narborough and Enderby. It was announced on 2nd of January 1987 that the police were asking all male residents in the villages between the ages of 17 and 34 blood and saliva samples voluntarily in order to eliminate all suspects. Wanted for testing was anyone who had worked in or had connection with these 3 villages. Not just residents, which include Carlton Hayes Psychiatric Hospital. Every resident was sent a standard letter inviting them to come. The police referred to these testing sessions as bloodings. Colin Pitchfork received one of these letters and was given a date and time to report. He told his wife Carol he was afraid to give blood. His wife wanted to know why, and he used the excuse of flashing. So in the years prior to this, Colin Pitchfork was reported on numerous occasions of flashing, and I think he was prosecuted on one occasion as well. But he was worried that the police would be to send him down for the rape and murder, or this is what he told his wife, flashings, and he used that as the excuse for not giving the bloodings. And the second letter came after he ignored the first, and Carol, his wife, started putting more pressure on him to take it. Colin approached various people at the bakery where he worked, including a 25-year-old called Ian Kelly. Now, Ian was quite a shy, reserved, and he'd only been working there for about a year, I think, at the time. Colin basically targeted him. He was telling the previous people that he'd done the flashing and he was worried about being sent down. And when he got to Ian, he changed his story and said it was because he'd given his blood test on behalf of somebody else, so he needed Ian to give his blood test. He offered him £200. Ian was very reluctant. He did actually say at one point that his eyes looked like they wanted to kill him, so he was quite intimidated by Colin. He said yes, and then when it came to the date, which was the 27th of January, he was really, really ill. He said, "Sorry, Colin, I'm not going to be able to do it. I've got a really bad temperature." And Colin said, "Look, please do it. Go to bed afterwards." And with that, Colin picked Ian up and took him to his house. Well, before that, he went to Leicester Railway Station with Colin and Ian. Both went to Leicester Railway Station to take a photo of Ian, and went back to Colin's, replaced his own photo on his passport with Ian's. And Colin was very creative and dexterous because he also used to do cake decorating as a bit of a sideline. So he was quite good with his hands, and he managed to take this passport. He also tested Ian on the names of his children, and then he drove Ian to the place where the tests were to be taken. Yeah, they accepted Ian as the person. He got sent through, and then when Colin got back home, he got a compass and stuck it into his arm, plaster on top of it, so that he could convince his wife that he had gone and had the test taken. A 17-year-old from Oby spent the evening with her friends in Wigston. She got into an argument with her boyfriend and decided to walk home. Just after midnight, a blue car pulled up beside her. She got in his car, grateful for the lift. After driving for a few minutes, they started to feel uneasy as he stopped speaking and had a menacing grin. He drove past her, turning. She asked him to go back, but he ignored her. Then he drove down a dark country lane. In desperation, she grabbed the steering wheel and he had to hang on and slam on the brakes. He said, "I thought you wanted it." "All I want is to go home," the teenager sobbed. His whole demeanour changed. "I've had a drink or two." And she responded with, "I can drive if you've been drinking." When they got near the A4, he pulled over and opened the door and with his hand on the handle asked her for a kiss. She threw herself against the door and leapt out, crying and running. When she talked to the police, she said he had unusual staring eyes, like dead eyes. Ian Kelly went on a break on Sunday afternoon in the Clarendon with a 26-year-old female manager who managed one of the bakery outlets, another woman and a young man, both Hampshire's employees. Cobb and started gossiping about Colin Pitchfork, his lover and his stillborn baby, and the fact that he wouldn't leave women alone. Ian mentioned Colin got him to take the blood test for him. The other man said when Ian went to the bar, "She tried to get me to take it for him too, offered me 200 quid. The shop manager get this off her mind. After a week, she asked the baker who'd been offered the money, "What are you going to do about Colin?" He said to leave it, but she couldn't. 6 weeks later, she rang the landlord of the Clarendon pub, whose son was a bobby. Saturday, September the 19th, Ian Kelly was arrested. Initially, he denied giving his blood, but eventually admitted it. When Colin was arrested, he asked if he could speak to his wife. He told her he was being arrested for the murders. When she asked if he did it, he said yes. She flew at him, attacking him. When the police tried to hold her back, she accidentally kicked one in the groin while she was aiming for her husband. Colin made his confession at the police station, but it was in the form of a story of his life, starting with his earliest memories. On the day of Lynda Mann's murder, he dropped his wife at college, then went on a wander to find a woman to flash, then came across Lynda walking. His statement about Lynda consisted mainly of him blaming her. Most women walked by and ignored him. Some screamed. She ran towards a dark footpath and got herself into a worse situation, where he raped and strangled her. With dawn, he was riding his motorbike when he sees her enter the footpath. He parked up and followed her into £10 Lane. He struggled to keep up with her, so he jogged past and exposed himself to her. She jumped into the gateway, then he grabbed her. He took her to the field. She was pleading with him and he told her to shut up. She fell and went quiet and looked at him. He asked him not to rape her, and he did it anyway, vaginally and anally. Then he strangled her. After he strangled Dawn, he baked a cake. Colin Pitchfork was just driven to Leicester Crown Court on 22nd of January 1988 in a van with blacked out windows. He'd grown a full beard and was rushed from the van into court. Ian Kelly was given an 18-month prison sentence, suspended for 2 years. He said to the television cameras that he was sorry for what he had done and that he was shocked. Colin received a double life sentence for the murders, 10 years for each of the rapes, and 3 for each of the sexual assaults in 1979 and 1983. with 3 years for the conspiracy with Ian Kelly. The psychiatrist's report diagnosed Colin Pitchfork as a psychopath of a psychosexual type. In June 2021, the parole board concluded it was safe to release Pitchfork. After 2 months, he was recalled to prison because he had been approaching young women. He is understood to have approached young women on multiple occasions while out on walks from the bail hostel from where he was living. He was arrested after probation staff raised concerns about his behaviour. There have also been concerns he has been trying to cheat the lie detector test by using breathing techniques. The step of recalling him is thought to have been taken as a preventative measure due to a concerning pattern in his behaviour. There was public outcry when the parole board deemed Pitchfork to be suitable for release. Pitchfork was subject to an unusually high number of licence conditions. The Minister of Justice said there were more than 40, including exclusion zones, curfews and polygraph testing, while murderers are usually only subject to about 7. In February 2025, he lost a High Court bid to challenge parole board decisions over an allegation that he sexually assaulted another prisoner. In a High Court hearing, Mr Justice Chamberlain said the allegations concerned a claim that Pitchfork sexually assaulted another prisoner by putting his hand on the complainant's upper thigh through clothing. The whole hearing was due in 2024, but it was postponed after Pitchfork launched a legal challenge over the extent of material he had been allowed to see following the sexual assault allegation, which first came to light in July 2024. The court was told that Pitchfork sought to challenge 2 decisions, barring him from seeing police body-worn footage of an interview with the alleged victim. However, Mr Justice Chamberlain ruled that Pitchfork did not have an arguable case. He also rejected a bid by the killer's barristers for the hearing to be held in private. The judge said there is simply no arguable basis at this stage for the contention that claimant's rights have been infringed. He added that, while it was unfortunate the next hearing concerning Pitchfork's potential release would be the 3rd since 2021, the parole board's decision cannot at this stage be shown to be unlawful. Rather than being shown the interview with his accuser, Pitchfork was instead allowed to see a redacted transcript of the footage and the police report. Paul Harris, representing Pitchfork, claimed the decisions were procedurally unfair and his client would be placed in a critical disadvantage in relation to a serious matter. Mr Harris said, "We are dealing with an absolutely critical stage in this man's progress and in this situation, and we are dealing with the possibility that even a few words can make a difference. It can be one word or one phrase and actually turns this case around." He added, "The argument for withholding this material is weak." Mr Harris said Pitchfork did terrible things very many years ago, but had since made exceptional progress in prison and has had no adverse reports about him in prison for 20 years. Ian Steele, representing the parole board, said Pitchfork's lawyers could see the footage if they gave assurances they would not disclose the footage to him, which they chose not to give. In witness submissions to the court, Mr Steele said Pitchfork would be entitled to test any evidence at the upcoming hearing concerning whether he should be released. Pitchfork's lawyers asked for the hearing to be heard in private, but the judge rejected the application. The court also heard Pitchfork now goes by a new name, and the judge made a temporary order saying his new identity should not be revealed. Mr Justice Chamberlain said that reporting of the killer's new identity may give rise to real danger to the claimant should he be released on licence in the future. However, he said the order may be challenged by the media in the future. Thanks for listening to this case. I find it an interesting case. It's the very first case, murder case to be solved by DNA. And it's always been close to my heart. Well, close to my heart, may not be the wrong word. Always been in my mind due to it being so close to where I was brought up in Leicester. And just to say, we should never forget Dawn Ashworth or Lynda Mann. They would now be in their 50s if they were alive today. And yeah, two very young lives just snuffed out by a psychopath. Laura Richards, who I follow quite a bit, who's a crime analyst, she used to work for Scotland Yard, says that psychopaths can never be rehabilitated. There's no point. So, and Pitchfork was diagnosed as a psychopath with psychosexual deviancy, and I don't think he should be released at all, really. Anyway, let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed listening today, and if you like my content, please like and subscribe. I've been Anne-Marie. Thank you. Bye-bye.